right, and the Yardbirds were one of them.
The string of hit singles that they had were quite remarkable. The kind of pop record there was no real precedent for at that time.
I mean, people say that, you know, like Elvis, there was nothing like him, but there was nothing like the Yardbirds.
Whoa, Louise, why don't you hurry?
They've ended up as footnotes in an awful lot of stories. There's the launchpad for Led Zeppelin story, there's the finishing school for guitar heroes story.
Clapton was very precious when he was a young lad. Precious in the way that some people that get into jazz and blues are, where they get rather kind of snobbish and elitist.
Well, I took an instant dislike to him. Actually, he seemed to be, you know, quite cocky, and that's the sort of character I don't really like.
Now Louise ain't good looking, and her hair ain't red, but she cooks my breakfast, brings it to my bed. Whoa, Louise, why don't you hurry home? You know I ain't never had no good loving.
I had a pretty strange sort of childhood, but so did thousands of other people, especially after the war. You know, there was all kinds of illegitimate situations with kids and things, and breaking up of homes, and I wasn't really, you know, alone in that, but I was singled out to pick up the guitar.
Knowing about Eric's history and his family life and all that, then it all makes a lot of sense. To spend a week rehearsing a two-note lick on a guitar, all that drive, I'm pretty certain that a lot of it, you know, stems from family background.
Eric Clapton was vital to the early success of the Yardbirds because he was like a prodigy. He was the main reason people went to see them.
Why don't you hurry?
I suppose I was going to folk clubs, as many people were when I was a kid. But the blues just seemed to be a better extension of that somehow. It had more bite.
I mean, our dilemma was that we couldn't make major chart success with the sort of blues material and the blues arrangements that we were doing.
Everybody tried so hard to turn those blues songs into English hit parade things, because nobody wanted to betray the cause.
I know Eric has always professed to be a purist, and he certainly was at that time.
I mean, he left the Yardbirds, so he says, because For Your Love was not what he believed to be in the strict blues tradition of what he wanted to play. I mean, I just think that's incredibly smug.
Eric's thing was, you know, it was the blues, it was that emotion through the guitar.
And he had ideas for other songs as covers, which weren't really single material.
But he really was the only one who didn't want to progress.
Maybe if I was sort of black and lived in the deep south, he might have thought it was okay, but I was white, Jewish, from Manchester.
I mean, okay, it wasn't strictly the Yardbirds as we had been playing, but it certainly, that time, was the sort of directions that we wanted to go in. I can't remember, but it seems to me almost seconds after the recording, he you know, decided he was not going to be in the band anymore.
And so when the news came, I went to see Jimmy Page immediately, and I said, Jimmy, you know, we've got a problem.
I think Giorgio did ask him, when Eric left, he asked Jimmy to join us.
He declined because he was, I mean, it was comfortable. He was doing session work.
I was doing about 3 studio dates a day, and you could say a good 5 days a week, and then maybe a couple over the weekend.
But he recommended a guitar player called Jeff Beck.
I remember being at Jimmy Page's when I mean, we were great friends, always sort of playing records to one another. He said, what do you think of this? And he put on 5 Live Yardbirds album. He'd already backed out of the job, and I think he was sort of scout to find a replacement for Eric.
We didn't audition him or anything. We just had a run through in the afternoon. And he had this sort of long hair and he was, you know, he looked really rough.
I was bad. I had, the hair was probably a bit longer down there, and spots, I had terrible spots.
Chris took him round to Carnaby Street and buy him some clothes and get his hair styled and make him into a semi-pop star. He was perfect, actually, for the band, because he could play all Eric's stuff.
One person shouting out, "Where's Eric?" And I said, "He's gone. Didn't you hear? Read the papers, he's left."
But he had this very futuristic feeling about his playing.
I was very, very, very happy with Jeff, because he had this emotional thing, you know, that Eric didn't have. Eric very elegant, but the emotion is there with Eric, but it's not exploding, you know. With Jeff, it was just exploding. So that's exactly what we need, you know.
A bit like having a, you know, having your own synthesizer on tap. It was that good, you know.
I remember one gig we finished, I'd just done this nonsensical feedback, you know, as part of the act, and like I used to wang around with the string and all that. And this guy grabbed me afterwards and he said, "You know those funny noises, that feedback?" He said, "You want to keep that? That's great. Keep it in the act." That was so precious about the marquee that most of the people there were there to see the nuts and bolts of the blues and all that. And it's only when we went and played these dumb-ass places in Wick, you know, and Dumfries, they would go, "Keith, you're great!"
I wouldn't say he was a great singer as such, but he certainly knew how to put a song across. I mean, he was able to just put something over, and you understood it and thought, well, you couldn't do it better.
He was a punk rock singer. It's just that punk rock hadn't been invented at the time, and everyone just thought he sounded weedy, flat, whiny, and out of tune.
Keith didn't have such a great voice, and Keith had a problem. He had just like he was very asthmatic,
puffing away on his inhaler. Bless him, you know, all the time. Or from a can of beer. That's all you heard in the back of the truck was.
We just couldn't understand how he was able to do it. I mean, because it takes a lot of air and energy to blow into a harmonica and suck back in and make all these bent notes and everything.
Hey, pretty women, standing around, make love to you, baby. One outside.
I was too ferocious a taskmaster, but I knew from my experience that you have to hit the iron while it's hot, leap ahead, establish a fortified position, and then take it easy. We hadn't been there yet, you know. We hadn't had enough hits, and we hadn't done enough things.
There was one occasion specifically that I can remember when he had a collapsed lung, and he was being pushed to go on by Giorgio, and he was going, "Come on, baby, you've got to get out there, you've got to do this," and he was just incapable of it.
But he was good. I mean, I thought he was a great singer and great harp player and had great ideas, and he was good on stage. If he was sober, he was...
Whether his drinking was to do with the fact that he was losing confidence or he was drowning something, I don't know, but at times it did make his performance suffer.
I hadn't ever travelled until I met the Yardbirds. I didn't even have a passport. So, you know, how can I ever complain about anything, you know? I mean, it was like a passport to the world, you know.
We'd obviously charted in America with For Your Love. So, you know, and there was that big British invasion.
On this ridiculous exchange basis that we were on at the time. If the act that was sent to England in our exchange didn't get a gig, we didn't get the gig, or some crap like that. And a man would come around with a suit and a briefcase saying, "You're not going to be playing tonight, boys." I remember sitting many hours in the dressing room going, are we or are we not playing? You know?
Giorgio essentially was the sixth member of the Yardbirds. I mean, he was an artist, he was a Russian, Italian, probably some other extraction in there somewhere.
He was all in the mind, Giorgio. It was all ideas for us and inspiration, but on the practical level, he was a bit missing.
To me, the Yardbirds were something very unique, and I knew exactly where they could have gone. You know, I had a plan in my head for them. They would still be going now. They'd still be going now, without looking ridiculous.
See the stars come falling down from the sky, gently passing, they kiss your tears when you cry.
They were I saw them like my younger brothers, you know. I mean, I wasn't that much older than they were, but I had a lot more experience, and I've always been on the artist side anyway.
He saw himself as a sixth member. I think he was probably hopeless with money.
I'm not a money-grabbing, greedy bastard, you know. I don't have $1 million in the bank. In fact, I have perhaps $3,000 in the bank. This has never been my major preoccupation, to accumulate a fortune on the back of others, you know.
As we were having hits and we were getting more successful, we started to talk and say, well, you know, we're not really getting much money.
The money wasn't really... I mean, the only time you get resentful is when you find out there's money been there, you've missed it. Quite understandably, I was getting pissed off with not knowing where the money was going.
You can accept little money to begin with, but when you've had quite some chart success and you've been touring for the last 2.5 years or whatever it is, and you're not getting any money, you start to think, well, something is going wrong here. You know?
For myself, my tears just fall into dust.
I remember one day we had a meeting about it, and he apparently was outside in a car waiting to see what had happened, and someone told him what we'd come up with, and he was very upset.
You're relieved as their manager. Wow, you know, this is after 3 years of working with this guy. So that was it took me a long time to recover from that one.
I'm sad.
But this time, because I had a contract, you know, I said, oh, thank God, you know.
We did sign a contract, certainly. I mean, he didn't make the mistake with us that he probably made with the Stones. I don't know exactly what happened, but I think contractually he'd never, you know, he'd obviously not done quite the right thing, and knowing Giorgio, I can well believe it. So they'd slipped through his fingers.
And what I wanted was the rights to all the things that I produced.
Yeah, Mister, you're a better man than I. Oh, Mister, you're a better man than I. Yeah,
We thought, oh well, he can have the rights. That was part of the deal. That went by very quickly.
Could you tell a wise man by the way he speaks or spells? Is this more important than the stories that he tells?
I don't think that we necessarily thought there was a future for it. You know, what, catalogue coming out 25, 30 years later, perpetually all around the world? Bad mistake.
yeah, Mister, you're a better man than I. Oh, Mister, you're a better man than I.
But it wasn't worth much for a long time, because it was like a whole period where, you know, who the hell was interested? So I was living on a couple of deals at CBS. I had with CBS for 3 years for $25,000, you know, for my stuff. So that's $7,000 a year. It's not exactly a fortune, you know.
Do you think that they think that you've done very well out of the Yardbirds back catalogue?
Perhaps. You know, Charlie Records has done well. I've had a couple of lawsuits on here, there, here and everywhere with people who, you know, I mean, it's a very piratic world out there, you know. I did honest deals because I had all the rights. I was not under any obligation to pay them any royalties. You know.
Before my eyes, just teach me to despise. Will time make man more wise?
Rarely did two of us go off in a corner or go to an island and write songs and say, you know, it's a fait accompli. Here you are, guys, we're going to do this. It was all pretty much of a group thing.